I like to get started. I like to try to follow the speaker's model, although I'm a minute off. We're going to go ahead and go to you. I need you to go ahead and go live, Justin. I'm not sure if that's what's popping up on my screen.
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, thanks. All right, welcome everyone to the meeting of the Baltimore County delegation on the 16th of February. It's 9 o'clock. And we are going to have three parts to today's meeting. First, we're going to have a presentation by Baltimore County, their Baltimore County Local Fiscal and Briefing by the Department of Legislative Services. We will have one bill hearing, and we will consider 4 bills for voting. And so with that, I am going to go to the experts that I see online here. We have among them Valerie Monroe, Hiram Birch, and Arnold Aja. I don't know which of you is taking point, but whichever of you it is, please feel free to take the floor.
Good morning, Chair Bersall and Speaker Jones and members of the Baltimore County delegation. My name is Arnold Aja. I'm here with Valerie Monroe and our legislative manager, Hiram Birch, who will support us for any questions that you may have. I will be sharing my screen.
This thing is active.
And we will be starting on page 1. It shows you that the state aid to local governments is a large portion of the total state budget. It is around 1/3 of total general funds and 1/4 of total state funds. Baltimore County will receive $1.2 billion in state aid in fiscal 2025. $1.1 billion is direct aid, and $127.6 million is for retirement payments. Total state aid increases by 5.4% over the prior year. You can see that the public school system receives the majority of this funding at $941.8 million. The community college receives over $70 million, and the county government will receive $38.8 million. Page 6 shows you the dollar difference. You can see the increase over 2020, the fiscal 2024 is $61.6 million. The county government increase will be $2.2 million. The public school increase accounts for the majority of this increase, over half. And you can see here that the community college aid to the community college decreases by $4.7 million, and that's largely attributed to a provision in the Budget and Reconciliation and Financing Act that reduces the aid to the community college by $4.5 million. We will now go over some county and municipal county government aid programs. On page 12, you can see the funding trend for the existing police aid formula, and Baltimore County will receive $12.7 million in fiscal 2025. Page 13 shows you the factors affecting the police aid formula, mainly your population density. Page 14 shows you the police aid enhancement funding, which will total $7.1 million. And this funding is based on the total number of violent crime offenses occurring within the county. Page 17 shows the funding trend for the Fire and Rescue Aid Program, and the county will receive $1.7 million in fire and rescue aid in fiscal 2025. Page 18 shows you that this funding is based on each county's share of property tax accounts relative to the statewide total. On page 19, you will see that the Baltimore County will receive $7.7 million in local health grants. And moving on to the Highway User Revenues Program, you will see the county will receive $13.8 million in highway user revenues in fiscal 2025. Page 20 details some key points of the funding history of this program and the distribution through the next fiscal years. as you can see on the table. However, there's a provision in the Budget and Reconciliation Financing Act that would revert funding back to fiscal 24 levels beginning in fiscal 2026. And this would result in a $3.7 million reduction in funding for Baltimore County in fiscal 2026 and 2027. I will now pass it over to Valerie, who will present on the education aid to Baltimore County.
Thank you, Arnold. Good morning again to the chair and the Baltimore County delegation. If you would look on page 31, you would observe that the vast majority of state funding is targeted to the public school system. Direct state aid to the Baltimore County public school system accounts for approximately 80% of total state aid provided to the county, and funding for teacher retirement accounts for around 10% of total state aid. In fiscal 25, the Baltimore County public school system will receive $941.8 million in direct aid, which represents a $37.5 million or 4.2% increase from the prior year. In addition, the state will provide $115.3 million in funding for teacher retirement payments. On a per pupil basis, Baltimore County will receive $9,963 in state funding, and this comprises $8,876 per pupil in direct aid and $1,086 per pupil for teacher retirement payments. On page 32, you would see that Baltimore County will receive a 4.8% increase in per pupil direct aid in fiscal 25. This actually exceeds the statewide average increase of 3.2%. Baltimore County ranks 6th in the amount of per pupil direct aid increase. We'll now turn our attention to the blueprint, to the state education funding under the blueprint initiatives on page 35. Baltimore County will receive $44.2 million in state funding under the blueprint initiatives in fiscal 25. This includes $4.2 million for supplemental instruction, $32.3 million in concentration of poverty grants, $3.6 million for full-day pre-kindergarten, and $1.2 million for college and career programs. On page 36, this provides us with a state education funding based on targeted student populations. A considerable amount of state education funding is based on targeted student populations, with Baltimore County receiving $321 million in targeted grants, which is under 3 categories: the compensatory aid, English language learners, and special education programs. Of these 3 programs, Baltimore County receives $199.3 million in compensatory aid funding, $67.7 million in special education funding, and $53.9 million in English language learners. We'll now turn our attention to student enrollment on page 45. The full-time equivalent student enrollment count decreases by 0.6% in Baltimore County. In comparison, the statewide average full-time equivalent student enrollment count increases by 0.1%. Currently, the county school system has around 106,100 public school students, which accounts for approximately 12.4% of students statewide. On page 46, this shows the students approved for the free and reduced price meal. The number of students approved for the free and reduced price meals increases by 0.9% in Baltimore County, which is below the statewide average increase of 1.3%. This increase is the 10th lowest in the state. Baltimore County currently has the 13th highest percentage of students approved for the free and reduced price meal at 54.2% of total student enrollment. Statewide, over half of the students are approved for the free and reduced price meal, and this ranges from around 27% in Carroll County to almost 90% in Dorchester County and Baltimore City. On page 47, This shows us the number of students identified as English language learners. Baltimore County has the sixth highest percentage of students identified as English language learners at 11.5% of total student enrollment. In fiscal 25, the number of English language learner students increases by 10.2%, resulting in 1,128 additional students requiring English language services. Baltimore County has the 13th highest enrollment increase for English language learners. If you turn on page 48, you would see that Baltimore County has an above average share of students receiving special education services and is ranked 7th in the share of students receiving special education in the state. In fiscal 25, the number of students receiving special education services accounts for 15.2% of total enrollment compared to the statewide average of 13.9%. If you go back to page 37, this actually shows the factors which impacts targeted education funding. And in Baltimore County, they actually have the 9th highest targeted student index in the state at 80.9%. This index adds together the percent share of full-time equivalent students who are approved for the free and reduced price meal, English language learners, and special education services. The targeted student index ranges from 42.3% in Carroll County to 117.4% in Baltimore City, with a statewide average at 78.3%. And finally, on page 50, this shows the public school enrollment as a share of total population. Statewide, public school enrollment represents 13.9% of the total state population. In Baltimore County, public school enrollment represents 12.5% of the overall county population. In comparison, Kent County has the lowest share, with public school enrollment accounting for 8.4% of the total county population, while Howard County has the highest share at 16.7%. I want to thank you for your time. I'll turn it back over to Arnold. He will provide us with a walkthrough of where you can find some of our resources on our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. So we're starting from the Maryland General Assembly website, and there's a hyperlink towards the top right corner, and to access to the Legislative Services webpage. And from there, you would click the Budget tab, followed by the State Aid to Local Governments subtab. And here we provide you with a snapshot of the allowance. But under State Aid reports, we provide you with 2-year charts by program. You can access the 2-year chart by program for your county. You also have access to the full report that we presented on under session reports. And under local fiscal briefing, you have access to a little summary document on the state aid to Baltimore County. Under highlighted, you also have the ability to download state aid data in Excel formats. And just briefly, we'll also show you how to access some of our local government reports. And that's actually located in another area. And it's under Policy Areas tab, and then the Intergovernmental tab. And here we prepare a variety of different reports. We have our annual reports, the balance sheet report, the county revenue outlook, which details a lot on the different revenue sources for counties. And we recently updated our local government overview report. And this has a variety of topics such as demographics, local government finances, tax rates, and public school funding as well. And I think that would conclude our presentation.
Arnold,
Arnold, can you kind of show them the public school funding? Because that's been a lot of interest. We've updated the information for the last 5 years, going back to FY20. It shows your revenue sources for public schools. And you can also kind of rank the local school systems on the amount of revenues they receive at both the state and local level. So if you just go to page 2, you can see that Baltimore County is ranked 12th in total per pupil funding at $18,255. And then on page 3, it shows the per pupil state funding for Baltimore County Public Schools is ranked number 12th. And then on page 4, it shows the local funding for public schools, which is ranked 9th. So we kind of updated all of our resources on our local funding for public schools. This does not include federal funds. We are still working on updating the federal fund information by going through the federal audits. But this does provide you with information. And Arnold, if you go to the trend page, I know this has been of interest to some legislators. We also provided on a per pupil trend, so you can actually see the per pupil funding over a 5-year period. You go to page 2, it kind of shows you the per pupil local appropriations and also the per pupil state funding and the total funding. So I just wanted to highlight that information as well.
Thank you. Are you we handed off to you briefly there. I want to make sure we're still that you all are complete. Are you done? Are you finished? Yes. Thank you very much. Hey, Justin, let's go ahead and leave their share screen up. I have a feeling that people are going to ask questions about certain pages. So let's allow them to scroll to them. I know that we have them and we can have them in front of us, but sometimes it's hard to do both on our screens. So let's leave that up for questions so that people can reference areas and they can find them. And thank you all very much. Thank you for your presentation. And the first hand I see up is Delegate Shalega.
Thank you, and thank you all for this presentation. Mr. Birch, I've spoken to you about the total aid per pupil funding for students, including the federal. And I don't think you've had that for the last year or two because of the COVID money. When do you think you will have that?
Right. We have reached out to talk to one local school system, try to find out the best approach to get this information. And we will be going through what they call a federal single audit of all 24 local school systems. So we'll be doing that in the next couple of weeks so we can pull out the funding for the funds for the COVID. The issue that we have found is that in the past, we have utilized local school systems budgets to give us the federal fund revenues. However, with the funding under the stimulus programs, local school systems had multiple years in which to use the federal funds, and several school systems budgeted all of their funds in 1 year and spent them over 3 years. So instead of looking at the revenue sources, we're going to be looking at the actual expenditure sources. So that's another way to look at federal funds, not the revenues they receive, but the federal funds they actually spent. And so we'll be doing that over the next couple of weeks as we review all 24 local school systems federal audit.
Thank you.
And thank you. I see Delegate Cardin's hand up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the the great presentation. I wanted to just ask a more general question, not necessarily about education, but it was a chart, and I didn't get the page number. It was somewhere, I think, in the 20s. It had to do with the percentage of property tax collected versus the percentage provided in local aid to each county. And I think it was like 12.1 was the number, 12.1% was the number that Baltimore County got. I just wanted to find out if there is any calculation or any information you can give about whether the amount of money that we collect in property taxes is somehow related percentage-wise to the amount of money we get in state aid, in local aid from the state, or is that relatively close?
Your state funding amount, it has no relation to the amount of money you collect in local property taxes. So there is no correlation in your state aid amount versus your property tax collection. However, around 70% of your state aid is based on local wealth. And Arnold, we need to go to our local wealth exhibit, which is on page 39.
Okay.
If you go to page 39, it kind of shows you per pupil wealth. And as you can see that Baltimore County has the 10th highest per pupil wealth amount in the state. State aid is a large portion of your direct state aid is inverse to local wealth. So you can see that Worcester County gets a very low amount of state aid, whereas Caroline receives a high amount. If you do go to page 42, it kind of shows you for the local wealth, both your local wealth, property wealth, and your local income wealth, because the state looks at both measures to determine a county's local fiscal capacity. These are your two primary local tax bases, your property base and your income base. And there you can see that on a per pupil basis, Baltimore County has the 11th highest property wealth and the 8th highest income wealth. So your income is relative to other jurisdictions is higher than your property base. When you put the two together, Baltimore County ranks 10th. And then page 43 kind of shows you that we don't measure them on a 50-50 basis. It's basically statewide, around 62% of the wealth base is comprised of property and 38% is income. In Baltimore County, it's around 57% based on property and 42% based on income. And on page 44, the rationale for that is that local governments receive a larger share of their revenues from property taxes than income taxes. So when you look at the amount of revenue that they receive from the two sources, it's very similar to the proportion of the local wealth measure of the two taxes. And that's what you want. You want your local wealth base to kind of mirror your actual revenue raising abilities, because that's basically what we're trying to do, is offset the low fiscal capacity in some jurisdictions versus the revenue raising ability in the more affluent jurisdictions. But currently there is no state aid program that is based on property tax collection. The only state aid program that's based on really local wealth is the disparity grant program, and that's based on income tax collection, and Baltimore County is not a disparity grant jurisdiction.
Thank you. That was very helpful. And it seems like Baltimore County is right, sort of, kind of in the middle. But in terms of we don't take a tremendous amount from the state in disproportionate amounts, and we don't give a tremendous amount to the other locals in disproportionate amounts. So it's interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Cardin. I don't see any other hands up. Real quick point of question that I have is on local highway user revenues. It's always hard when you're looking at these charts to see your county at the very bottom or top of whatever you want to put it. Our per capita is below everybody else's and well below some others. Is there a reason that Baltimore County's local highway user revenues, what drives that?
Okay, the local highway user formula outside of Baltimore City's calculation, which is a separate calculation, is based on road mileage within a county and municipality. However, the municipal share is slightly higher than the county share. So when all things being measured, jurisdictions with municipalities receive slightly more funding than jurisdictions without municipalities. So you can see Howard County is another jurisdiction, just like Baltimore. There are no municipalities, so you get slightly less funding. Like Anne Arundel County gets less funding than, let's say, a Washington, Wycomico, Worcester. Jurisdictions with more municipalities, because the municipal share that goes back to the municipalities is actually higher than it goes back to the county governments. It's just how the formula was set up, that the formula, when they split out the revenues for county and municipal governments, a slightly higher share was allocated to municipal governments, not the county governments.
Thank you. I was seeing Howard County and I was wondering what the comparison was between, what the similarity was between those two, and you've clarified.
You're going to notice the jurisdictions with a higher percentage of residents within municipalities receive a higher proportion of the money on a per capita basis.
Excellent. Thank you. That clarifies it perfectly for me. I see Vice Chair Jackson has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I kind of want to talk about the CADE funding for the community colleges, how that number was determined, or the decreased number
Okay.
in funding.
Okay. The primary factor is there was a reduction in the share of funding on a per pupil funding that is provided to the local community colleges. Under current law, the per pupil funding is set at 29% of the funding levels provided at selected higher institutions of higher learning, basically UMS system. Under the BRFA provision, the 29% per pupil funding has been reduced to 26.5%. So that's basically causing most of the funding reduction. They also did a slight change to the enrollment, how the other part of the formula works, but the primary reduction is based on reducing the statutory funding level that is based on funding at the other 4-year institutions from 29% to 26.5%.
So the community, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And that is a BRFA provision that has to be approved by the General Assembly.
Yes, thank you for that. I'm sorry, Delegate Jackson, were you any follow-up there?
Yeah, so I was just saying, so the decrease at the community college level, you're saying is based on the other institutions?
Correct. The CADE formula, the primary component of the CADE formula provides a per pupil grant, a per student grant, and that per student grant is based on funding that the state provides at the University System of Maryland and some other 4-year institutions. And it's based on currently 29% of the per student funding provided at the other institutions of higher education. Under the BRFA provision, the per student funding amount would be based on 26.5% of the per student funding at the institutions of higher education. So that's the main driver of the reduction. You basically are reducing the per student grant that the community colleges will be receiving.
But is that based on student population?
Correct. It's based on your per student grant is based on the student enrollment at each community college. But the per student funding amount is based on funding that the University of Maryland system receives. And the community colleges receives, under current law, 29% of the per student funding at the institutions of higher education. Now they will get 26.5%. And there's also been a slight adjustment to some other components of the community college formula, but that's the primary reason that the funding is being reduced.
One of the other adjustments, if you'll allow me, is that there has been a slight change in the way that the number of students is computed by MHEC. Is that accurate?
That is correct. And that is resulting in around a $1 million decrease in funding this year. It's basically a $920,100 decrease. So that's another factor for your funding reduction, both the BRFA provision and also how DBM has computed the enrollment count.
Now the formula, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, but
No, you're still on the floor. I kind of jumped in there.
So so are they using FTE to determine that number?
There's an FTE count that is determined for each community college. Okay, there's also an FTE count that is determined for the University System of Maryland. Under current law, funding for the local community colleges is based on 29% of the per student funding that the University System of Maryland receives. Under the BRFA provision, funding for community colleges will only be based on 26.5% of the per student funding that the University System of Maryland receives. So that's the primary reason why funding for the community college system is going down, is that your per student grant amount is being reduced.
Based on the number of students that MHAC.
It's based on the formula per share is being reduced from 29% to 26.5%. The amount of funding that you get in relation to the University System of Maryland is being reduced from 29% to 26.5%.
All right. And thank you.
Thanks.
Yep. Delegate Shalega.
Thank you for one quick more bite at the apple here. There was a chart that I recall seeing that showed for every dollar that each county sends to Annapolis, they get X amount of dollars back. Do you still produce that?
We do, Arnold. If you can go to the Intergovernmental Matters page, it's under our balance sheet report. We'll have to go to the Intergovernmental Matters webpage. It's our balance sheet report. These are based on audited numbers, so that is why the 2021 number is the latest year that we have. If you turn to page 1, no, not page 1.
We're not seeing it. We're not seeing a change on our screen.
I'm seeing the change.
Oh, well, then it might be my problem.
It's on page 6.
Thank you.
6, sorry.
Right there.
Right.
So
There we
right
go.
there. So
We've
what
got
you
them.
see here in Exhibit 1-2 is this basically measures the amount of state tax revenues collected by jurisdiction versus the amount of state aid that goes back. On a statewide basis, around 33% of state tax revenues actually goes back to local governments in the form of state aid. That's pretty significant. That's a large share, which means the other 67% is actually used for the state government to pay for state agencies, entitlement programs. So a large portion of our state aid, of our state tax money, does go back to local governments. And as you can see, that amount ranges from around 11 cents in Talbot County to over $1 in Somerset County. So why does Somerset County receive more money than they actually put in? Well, one reason why Somerset County is one of the least affluent jurisdictions in Maryland. They have a high poverty rate and a very low state tax collection rate. And we can show you that on another exhibit. Baltimore County gets slightly less than the state average of 0.26 for every dollar they put in. And on page 7, it kind of puts it on a percentage basis. So Baltimore County is around 79% of the state average. If you turn to page, if you keep scrolling down, I think a better way, hey, let's stop right there. This basically compares your share of your state population versus how much state revenue is collected and how much state grants you receive. So Baltimore County is around 13.8% of the state's population. You rank number 3. You generate the second highest percentage of revenue at 14.2%, and you receive around 11.4% of the state aid, which is 4%. Then following,
Go ahead and continue. Let's not drill down too deep here.
right.
Finish up.
So anyway, so this is the information that you can go through this report. The next page, Arnold, if you just show them, we will stop. Just put it on a per capita basis.
And I appreciate your enthusiasm. I do. You've got and a lot of good information. It is available to us. But finish up. Conclude what
We're done. This is just trying to answer Delegate Salega's question. So
Thank you. This is great info. Thank you. And I know Delegate Eversole likes math too.
She's right.
now we are.
Okay, go ahead.
We are more than willing to reach out to any of you to stop by your office and talk with you about any of our reports. So if you have any questions when you look through this information, we'll be more than willing to help you.
Thank
with
you.
any questions you may have.
I did see a couple of hands, and I wasn't just on that particular topic. We were getting a little into the weeds. I saw both. I see Delegate Phillips' hand up. So, and I did see Delegate Ruth, but it seems to be down. Let's go to Delegate Phillips.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and good morning to my colleagues. I want to kind of dig in just a little bit on what Delegate Vice Chair Jackson asked. Should the formula for community colleges be based on the same percentage as the University of Maryland system? Isn't there some inequities since the community colleges deal with a different population?
Those questions probably need to be addressed by our budget analyst and who deals with community colleges. I can just present you with information on how much they receive, but we can have our budget analyst for community colleges reach out to your office to talk with you more about this. But currently, the formula for community colleges, they base it on funding at the University System of Maryland, just to make sure that when funding increases occur for our institutions of higher education, community college funding also goes up. And they determined that 29% under current law is the share that it should be based on. But that share has been set by the General Assembly based on information presented to the General Assembly. So right now, under current law, the funding is set at 29% of the per student funding at institutions of higher education. What percentage that should be will be determined by the General Assembly, by the General Assembly based on information provided by multiple parties. So right now, the funding is set at 29%. The BRFA provision will reduce it to 26.5%. What that percentage should be will be determined by the General Assembly.
Okay. All right.
And your answer is don't blame the messenger.
Got it.
Well, and I'm not really the primary messenger. I'm like the secondary messenger.
Okay.
It's okay.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Delegate Ruth, did you have a question, or are you have decided not to? Okay, I've lost her. All right. Then that concludes the presentation part, and I thank Ms. Monroe, Mr. Birch, and Mr. Aja for being present. We appreciate the availability of this information and also showing us where we can find it. Obviously, in this period of time, reading all those numbers takes a keen eye, and if we can slow down a little bit and look at them, and I feel like you've given us the resources to do that, we certainly appreciate it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay.
We're going to move to the voting portion of the agenda right now. We have 4 bills to consider. I'm going to start with 2 that I know have amendments. We're going to jump into House Bill 637, alcoholic beverages, sale or delivery of off-premises consumption. This bill has an amendment, and I turn to the subcommittee chair on alcohol, Vice Chair Jackson.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yes, colleagues, this is my bill. And the amendment that we have would just make the bill specific to Baltimore County. I'm sorry, it was another amendment that changed. Do we have the language, Justin?
Let's go to Charity. I'm sure she can.
Oh,
tell us.
Charity.
We had sort of 2 amendments, but I think they can be rolled into one here
Sure.
when we talk about them.
I'm only aware of one amendment.
Okay.
It changed it to Baltimore County only.
Okay.
So instead of a
Oh,
statewide
I'm
bill,
sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm thinking about your bill. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So this
Right.
amendment would make it would make this bill specific to Baltimore County only. And it was voted favorable with 1 abstention. I asked to move the amendment favorably.
Okay. This would just, without this amendment, this bill no longer becomes our purview. So we have a motion on the amendment. Do we have a second? Okay. All in favor of this amendment, signify by raising your hands or saying aye. If you have opposition, put your hand up, please. I think Delegate Long put his hand up before that, not after. So I'm going, unless he objects, I'm going to say that he is a positive vote on this. We'll stand by. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay, so now we have the amendment. Now the bill has become a Baltimore County bill. Subcommittee Chair Jackson on the bill.
Yeah, so HB 637 would reinstate the now sunsetted state law and allows to-go alcoholic beverage to again be sold for off-premise consumption if purchased with food, this time with no sunset. The bill was voted favorably. Well, the bill has a favorable report with the subcommittee with 3 votes favorable and 1 abstention.
And I saw Delegate Cardin's hand up, but it dropped down.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I wasn't sure. This was a previous policy that we are just removing the sunset. Is that correct?
Yeah, and well, I'll let the
Yes.
Subcommittee Chair, sorry.
Yes, we're just we're removing the sunset and making it specific to Baltimore County only.
All right, so do I have a motion on the bill?
I to move the bill favorably.
Second, is there a second? Thank you for the second. The bill's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, there was an abstention in subcommittee, so we're gonna do a voice vote on this one so that people can weigh in properly. Vice Chair Jackson.
Yes.
Delegate Allen.
Yes.
Delegate Bendari, I believe, is absent. My last check. Delegate Cardin.
Yes.
Delegate Forbes. Maybe not here also. We'll wait and see if she catches up. Delegate Grammer.
Yes.
Delegate Guyton. Okay, also absent. Speaker Jones.
Yes.
Delegate Long.
Yes.
Delegate Mangione.
Yes.
Delegate McCaskill.
Yes.
Delegate Metzger.
Yes.
Delegate Naraki.
Yes.
Delegate Pasteur. See you on screen, Delegate, but I didn't hear your vote. Delegate Pasteur.
Yes.
Delegate Phillips.
Yes.
Delegate Ruth.
Yes.
Delegate Stein.
Yes.
Delegate Shalega.
Yes.
Delegate White Holland.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, before you move forward, all of you were frozen, so I heard no votes until you got to me.
Okay, and would explain, and I think that must have happened to a few people. I see Delegate Forbes' hand up. We missed your vote. Would you like to? We're assigning it to computer glitches.
Can you start at Cardin, please?
Sure. Hold on. Delegate Forbes.
I was just gonna say that you were frozen and I didn't hear you call my name, so I was yes on that.
Okay.
So-
Thank you. And I will double check again for Delegate Guyton, since I had the glitch here. Okay, so she's absent. And Delegate Bendari. All right, also absent. So since we had a glitch, but I don't think we need to run through them all again here.
Were they all for it?
We have everyone who is present has voted for it. I will go ahead and throw my vote in so that
Thank you.
Mhm. We have positive vote then?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm
thank
sorry.
you.
Yes.
Yep. We have a constitutional majority, and we will send this bill to Alcohol Committee. That's great because the testimonies are on Monday, and we can say that the delegation has taken it up. We'll also be sure to get to the next bill, House Bill 1269, Baltimore County Alcoholic Beverages License Applications, online notice. This one also has an amendment, I believe, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, this is the chairman's bill. The amendment specifically changes the number of publications from 2 to 1 and clarifies that the print notice must be in a newspaper in general circulation in Baltimore County. This amendment was given a unanimous favorable report by the subcommittee. I ask that you move favorably, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I think this is a pretty straightforward amendment, so unless there's an objection, we're going to take a voice vote on this one. All in favor? I need a motion, sorry. I need a motion.
Move the bill.
Okay.
Second.
We're on the amendment, but all in favor of the amendment, please raise your hands. Anyone who opposes, put the little yellow or color hand up in the corner. I see none, so the amendment carries. I believe the amendment also had a provision in it, now that I think of it, that said that we were originally said they're gonna put up applications, but they're just gonna put up notice, which was actually dialing it back a bit. Does the county want to weigh in at all? We have the bill before us. Mr. Vice Chair, do you want to make a motion on the bill on behalf of the subcommittee?
Yes, so let me just kind of explain the bill.
sorry.
HB 1269, which was requested by the county, modernizes the reporting requirements for the hearings for liquor license applications. As amended, it reduces the number of publications the notice has to be printed in, has to be printed down to one. Changes the requirement for the newspaper to be in the Baltimore County area and requires them to post notification online as well. The bill was given a unanimous favorable report by the subcommittee. I ask that you move the bill as amended forward favorably.
We have a motion on the bill. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Delegate Allen. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the bill? We'll bring the county in if there are questions, but let's see if there's any discussion among the delegation. Okay, seeing none, I think we're probably prepared to go to a vote here. And again, because there was no dissension in the subcommittee, without objection, I'm going to do this with a visible or voice vote.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, can I just ask, was there any opposition from witnesses at all?
No, there was no
No.
opposition. Yeah, sorry. That, Mr. Chair. Go, you got it.
No, there wasn't. No opposition.
Sorry, Mr. Vice Chair. I can't
That's
help
okay.
it sometimes.
It's your bill.
Yeah, I know, but that's all the more reason. So there you go. All right. So without objection, I'm going to go ahead and just take a visible or voice vote on this. All in favor of the bill as amended, please raise your hands or say aye.
Aye.
And I think that's Delegate Long raising his hand. Anyone who objects to the bill, please speak now or put your hand up. And I see none of those. Oh, Delegate Ruth, you're actually indicating objections to the bill.
No, that I must have hit it accidentally. I'm
All right,
sorry.
you got your hand up and you got a little yellow hand up. And so I'm trying to decide, maybe they cancel each other out. So Delegate Ruth is a positive vote and it carries carries unanimously. We will send this along to the Economic Matters Committee, and this will help greatly with the testimony on Monday. We have 2 more bills to consider, and I think this is going to go pretty quickly. First of all, we will take up House Bill 495, Education, Baltimore County School Board Nominating Commission Records and Meetings Requirements. I will go to the Education Subcommittee Chair, Delegate Forbes.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, the Education Subcommittee didn't get a chance to meet this week, so we'll consider it next week and be ready to vote next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Without objection, we'll hold the bill for a week for voting. Seeing none, that will end that. And on House Bill 1278, Baltimore County Light Emitting Diode Stop Signs, a pilot program. For this, I will go to the Chair of the Public Safety Subcommittee, Delegate Card. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, the county was looking for information to provide the subcommittee. We did meet briefly on the bill. At that time, it was indicated to me by the sponsor that he was working with the county and that perhaps legislation wasn't necessary at this time, that they were going to look at other things. So I would defer to the sponsor to make sure that he didn't want us to proceed, because that was the message that subcommittee got.
Thank you, Mr. Carden. I appreciate that, Delegate. Yes, great things take place if you work with the administration properly and so forth. So I'm pulling this bill, and it's kind of worked out through the county. So I'm very happy.
With that, without objection, the delegation will not take up this bill. It will be withdrawn by the sponsor. Seeing none, that brings us to our bill hearings portion of the meeting. We have House Bill 1213. This is a Baltimore County Sheriff salary bill, and the sponsor is Delegate Pastor. Delegate, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Very quickly, our sheriff was way behind. He's not had a raise in a couple of decades, actually. So the bill raises his salary. This did come from the county executive's office. It, just like the school board salaries, will not go into effect. The effect date of the bill will be at the beginning of July of 2024. But like the school board salaries, it does not actually take place. It does not happen for the sheriff until the next election, because the bill notes that it has to wait until the next election time, and his, of course, won't be until 2026.
And thank you, Delegate Pastor. And your testimony is complete?
That is complete.
Thank you.
Unless anyone from the county, is anyone from the county who would like to chime in on it? Because again, it did come from them as after they looked at his salary.
Exactly. For peace of mind, perhaps the county would just like to let us know.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Speaker, and Delegate Pastor for introducing this bill on behalf of the county. As Delegate Pastor suggested, the county, under a local bill, did a full evaluation of officers and executive staff that's in what's called the exempt service. We had a consultant look at comparable positions in other jurisdictions across the country. We benchmarked against peer jurisdictions within Baltimore County to look at a broad suite of positions, both elected and appointed in our county. And one of the glaring results of this analysis was that our sheriff was currently paid significantly less than the sheriff in other jurisdictions within Maryland and across the country. So what we've endeavored to do in this bill is essentially raise his rate of pay to the recommended minimum based on the benchmarking that was done by our consultants by 2026, as Delegate Pastor suggested. And then we identify a mechanism and a rate of increase over time. We believe that the sheriff of the third largest jurisdiction deserves to be fairly compensated. And we would appreciate a favorable report on this bill. And I'm happy to take any questions.
And thank you very much. As much as this is a mandate on county spending, it's always good for us to work in coordination with the county, as we did with the school board, which will ultimately be a county expenditure, even though the school board will be the ones. Delegate Forbes, I saw your hand up for a moment.
I was just going to point out what you pointed out, that it's a county spending bill. And so it doesn't affect the state budget at all if we pass this.
Thank you. That's looking at it from the other direction, who it affects and who it doesn't. Thank you very much. We don't have any witnesses beyond county government on this. I do see Delegate Metzger's hand up. Delegate Metzger.
It just occurred to me, since this is the county spending bill, is there any way that perhaps that he wouldn't have to wait 2 years to get a pay raise?
So Delegate Metzger, that's an excellent question. And when we originally drafted the bill, we wanted it to be in effect for fiscal year 25. We were told by the drafters at DLS that was not possible to do. And that's why we have to wait until 2026 for this change to go into effect.
Thank you for that clarification. I was just questioning because I know some of my colleagues were thinking the same thing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Any other questions on the bill during this hearing?
May I, Mr. Chair?
Certainly, Delegate.
Certainly, if you or Delegate Metzger or anyone else, I can talk to you and give you the exact section, et cetera, that points to why he can't get it. I won't do it now, but I can let them know why it is that he, again, like the school board, won't get it until the next election, because I think that's important to know for now and for the future.
Speaking generally, if you can't pass legislation to raise the salary of an elected official while they're in office,
While they're in office.
because there could be a conflict there.
Right.
And so that is generally what's in effect here.
Yeah,
First,
but I can give them the exact spot if they'd like to know.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Any other commentary on this bill before we close the hearing on it? All right. That ends the hearing, and that brings us to the end of our agenda. Does anyone have anything for the good of the order of the delegation at this point? All right. I see no hands there either. I thought this would be a good one. Everybody's got places to go today, and that's good, especially as they're pro forma. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
And Chicken Day.
And if you're in Annapolis, because your committee is meeting, it's Chicken Day. So thank you all very much, and we will see you next week.